This one piece of advice changed the way I look at food completely. And that is that we are overfed but undernourished. And what I mean by that is we eat more than enough calories, but we just simply do not receive the level of nutrients that's required for us to be performing at our top level. So if you deal with things like low energy, brain fog, poor sleep, achy joints, all different kinds of manners of, discomforts that we might be experiencing in life, can very well be tied back to the fact that our diets are providing us simply with empty calories for energy, but they're not providing all of those micronutrients, those trace minerals, those vitamins that we're so badly needing and lacking in life to make sure that we're performing at our top level and honestly just showing up as our best self possible. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explain what these empty calories are, where a majority of our energy or our food intake is coming from, and then we're going to highlight some of the foods that we should be consuming, as well as some specific superfoods that I consume that are very high in nutrients, and I personally believe that everyone should be including at least a couple of these into their daily diets or food that they're consuming. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So it's estimated by the CDC that the average person here in the US consumes 2,100 calories. Personally, I think that is lowballing the number for sure. I know many people like personally that crush 2,100 calories easily by like lunch. So definitely I think people are consuming more than that. And there are other estimates that put it up around 3,000 or 3,500 calories a day. This is going to be very dependent, obviously, per person, but nonetheless, we all consume a pretty decent amount of calories, probably more than we need to in many cases. But what really matters here is where are those calories coming from? So when we break this down into our macros, right, like protein, fats, and carbohydrates, about 50% of, it's actually a little bit under, but about 50%, I think it's like 47% of our total caloric intake is coming from carbohydrates. So I'm definitely not saying that carbohydrates are all bad. I'm not dogmatic about this. I think carbohydrates do have a place in our diets. For people who choose to do keto, I think keto functions really well, but maybe for just like a period of time. At least for myself personally, I found that, bringing, more carbs in at some point and then less in at other times tends to work best for me. But what really we want to drill into here when it comes to carbohydrates is the type of carbohydrates. Where are we getting these carbohydrates from? So it's not like we're out here eating sweet potatoes and mangoes to get our carbohydrates, but rather most of our carbohydrates are coming from processed foods, from processed grains, and from things like potatoes typically is a big one. And then the biggest culprit, the one that I really want to drill in on, is added sugar, like cane sugar, right? Or corn syrup or whatever, wherever you get your added sugar from. So the added sugar, it's estimated, once again, by the CDC that about the average person consumes somewhere around 77 grams of added sugar per day, which equates to about 60 pounds of sugar per year. Once again, I think that's lowballing it. I actually think people consume more than that. I personally think the average American consumes closer to 100 pounds of sugar, which I'm not the only one out there thinking this. There are other estimates that put it at 100 and even above 100 pounds of sugar per year per person in the US. So, and the reason I say this is because when we look at 77 grams of sugar, you just take one soda or one sweetened beverage. It is not uncommon for it to be at 20, 30, or even 40 grams of sugar in just one drink. And I know people who will consume 1, 2, or even 3 of those beverages in one day, which already, if you're consuming 3 of those, you are absolutely over 77 grams of sugar for that day. And that's not including all the other foods that you might be consuming that also have sugar in them. And trust me, there's a lot of sneaky ways in which sugar can make its way into our diets. It's not just Pop-Tarts and cereals, you know what I mean? It's also things like pasta sauce, for example, which is typically something we don't think about, but there's absolutely added sugar in our pasta sauce. So anyways, there's all kinds of ways in which sugar makes its way into our diets, but I think the biggest culprit here definitely is in our beverages. We tend to love sweetened beverages, and it's really easy to put a lot of sugar into a beverage that you can consume in like 30 minutes or less, right? So it's like a quick hit of the sugar. So sugar is one of the things that I think if you can focus on eliminating or minimizing the amount of sugar that you consume, and I'm talking about like added sugar here, I'm not talking about eating a fruit. By all means, eat as much fruit as you want. I would never come after you for doing that. Like if you're getting sugar from fruit, I really don't care. But we're talking about added sugar here, right? Like from like cane sugar or high fructose corn syrup or something along those lines. We want to try to minimize that as much as possible. And that right there is going to help out massively. Then from there, we can look into the other carbohydrates like, really refined grains like, I don't know, like Wonder Bread or something like that. We want to really try to eliminate those and not overly consume them. And the real reason here is number one, like when we just look at added sugar, it is a true empty calorie. That is providing you like zero nutritional value. It's just providing you like calories. It's providing technically, I guess, energy, right? But when we look at bread as well, this is something that you can look on the back of a package, enriched, right? Like it's had to have additional ingredients added to it because it's been stripped, right? And then, there's people who will say, well, oh, I eat whole grain. Even whole grain, I'm personally not a big advocate of in terms of saying like, oh yeah, eat that as like a health food, right? I don't think that the benefits outweigh the cost there, but I'll let you be the judge. If whole grains work well for you, then that's totally fine. And then as well, there's things like I said, like potatoes, which typically come in, not just like a boiled potato, but rather they come in like a fried form, like a French fry. Don't get me wrong, I love French fries, but definitely not the best thing to be eating. So we want to really try to focus on getting our carbohydrates from cleaner sources, like, as I mentioned earlier, fruits or, things like other root veggies like sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes, and I think they're a really great way to, still get some carbohydrates, but in a way that's going to provide more nutritional value and benefit to you. So on that note, another piece that I think we need to really be mindful of is that it's estimated that about 60% of the average American's diet comes from processed foods. Now, processed foods are not all bad. I think they get a really bad rap, and really just hear it so often that, oh, avoid processed foods. I think what we really need to focus on is the ultra processed foods. Those are the things we want to watch because technically cutting food, like cutting up some fruit, I believe is actually considered processing it. So it's not always bad. Not all processing is bad, but the ultra processed stuff, that's where it really goes through this processing, process. And finally, getting to a state where the food looks almost unrecognizable to its original state. So when we think of like a Snickers bar, for example, like you wouldn't just walk out and pick a Snickers bar and be like, oh yeah, that's where, the Snickers come from. No, like Snickers are absolutely manufactured. And sorry, if you love Snickers, I'm just picking on any one of these, candies basically, but, or ultra processed food, but it's not something that is super recognizable in nature, but rather you could go out and recognize an apple on a tree, or you could recognize an orange or, a cow or whatever it might be. Right. So the further away we get from the source of nature, of how the food looks in nature, the more processed likely that product is. And if you're buying it in the freezer section or in a box, more than likely it's probably ultra processed. And those are the things that we typically want to avoid. And so a really easy way to think about this is we want to shop the outside of a grocery store, and we want to avoid going into the middle aisles. And that's because what's on the outside of a grocery store? You've got fruit, you got vegetables. Sometimes you might have to go into the inner aisles to get things like, I don't know, like nuts, like macadamia nuts or something like that. But as well, you have your dairy products. You've got yogurt, kefir, maybe some really good aged cheeses out there as well. Maybe you hit the counter for some high quality meats as well. So we want to really shop that area, skip around the alcoholic area. You don't want to be doing that. That doesn't need to be in your diet either. Maybe just on special occasions. But anyways, you really want to shop the outside of the grocery store, and you want to avoid going into the middle aisles because that's where most of the ultra processed foods are. And so simply by doing this, by choosing foods that are, You could consider them whole foods. You consider them single ingredient foods. So, if an apple had a supplement fact on the back of it, it would, in the ingredient list would just say apple, as opposed to saying, 15 different ingredients, right? So we want to find single ingredient foods that are, closer to nature. And those are going to be the foods that have more nutritional value in them. So per calorie, you're going to be receiving more trace minerals, more vitamins, right? You're going to be getting things like magnesium, manganese, selenium, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin E, right? These are all things that we really need to be functioning at our top level, and they're just not present in a lot of the foods that we're consuming, and they're definitely not present in that added sugar. So I'm sorry, I'm coming back to that, but we we have a sugar addiction, a sugar problem, and we need to nip that thing in the bud. So anyways, those are the foods that we really want to focus on. And what I love about this approach of understanding being overfed but undernourished is that when we really just start to focus on nourishing the body, and I'm not a big fan of like counting calories, but when we move away from this idea of just looking at food as calories and start looking at food as nutrition and the building blocks of literally your body, because your body is going in its infinite intelligence, it's going to break down that food and it's going to take it and use it to do all the things that it needs to do. And if you are not giving this incredible body of yours the tools that it needs, then how is it supposed to build you up into the best version of yourself, right? It just simply can't, right? You can have the best carpenter in the world, but they can't build you a house if they don't have any lumber or nails, right? Like they have to have the tools to do the job. And what we're doing is that we're essentially not giving our body the tools it needs to do its job. So nature is incredibly, truly intelligent. And so all we have to do is get out of its way and just give it the stuff it needs, and it will take care of the rest. So I like this. It's a little bit more of a simplified approach. Just look at food as, in terms of nutrition. Is this going to provide you nutrition, or is this going to be an empty calorie that maybe just tastes good and has a nice crunch to it, right? We want to really focus on the things that are providing a lot of nutrition. And so on that note, the last piece I wanted to end off with here is what superfoods I include in my diet as well that truly are like nature's multivitamins. They're going to provide you with a lot of vitamins and minerals, more than just your average, apple or orange or, steak, right? So first off, we'll start with if you're carnivore or if you eat animal-based products, then 100%, if you eat meat, you definitely should be eating organ meat as well. There is no ifs, ands, or buts on this one. 100% you should be eating organ meats. And this could be liver, could be heart, could be brain if you're even into that. I know people eat kidneys. There's all kinds of things. Personally, I typically just stick to liver and to heart. Those are the two that I find to be the most palatable and easy to mix in with foods. Specifically, if you have ground beef, you can chop up some liver, like finely chop it up and put it into the ground beef and hardly even know it's there. Or maybe you like the flavor of it. I don't know. But 100% you should be eating those. They are packed full of trace minerals and vitamins and all the different things that your body needs. So, and even on that note, with liver being so abundant in these different kinds of vitamins and minerals, actually, you don't really need to eat that much liver. I think you can have some organ meats, maybe just even once a week or maybe twice a week. But I really believe that, when we look at an animal, when you see like a cow, for example, most of what's on the cow is the muscle meat. And then beyond that is then the organ meats, right? And if you were to go butcher a cow and just split it between you and your family, it would naturally work out that you just have less of those organ meats. So I don't think organ meats are meant to be consumed in, massive quantities. But if we can just include them, into our weekly schedule, I think they're going to provide a massive benefit. Now, if you don't eat meat and you don't eat any animal products, that's totally fine. There's a ton of superfoods out there as well that are really great for you. A couple of them, just to mention, are definitely goji berries. I love goji berries. Hemp seeds are another great one. Cacao in any form, whether it's cacao powder or cacao nibs or, whatever, even dark chocolate, although I prefer a raw cacao so that we get a lot of the, we get the full spectrum of benefits with it. And then last but not least is going to be spirulina and chlorella, which are both microalgae. All of these are going to be very beneficial. They're going to have tons of vitamins and minerals in them. and they're going to be very nourishing for the bodies. They're something that we should be consuming on a regular basis. When it comes to spirulina and chlorella, my favorite, hands down, selfless plug is Energy Bits. This right here is the highest quality microalgae that I've found on the market. I've had the founder of this, Catherine Arnston, on multiple podcasts on this show, so feel free to go and check those out. But this has 40 plus vitamins and minerals just in this is spirulina. This is the spirulina. And it also has all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein. On top of that, you also have things like superoxide dismutase and chlorophyll in here, which are incredibly beneficial for your blood, for your mitochondria, and for all kinds of things. So I highly recommend those, and they're super easy to digest. They're soft on the digestion, which is, for me personally, a really big factor because digestion is something that I've had issues with as a kid. And the other superfood I really wanted to mention is cacao. If you're not already adding this into your diet, then I don't know what you're doing, because it's the easiest one to include. It's literally chocolate, basically, just in its raw, pure form. So you can add this to smoothies, you can add it to yogurts, you can add it to overnight oats, or whatever the heck you want to add this into. It's super easy to include, and incredibly high in minerals, especially some of the minerals that were missing. And this right here is grown in volcanic soil. This is heirloom species, and it's tested for mycotoxins. It's mycotoxin free. This is literally the highest quality cacao that I have found out there. I've been to countries where they grow chocolate and cacao, and truly, like, this is a special product. So go check them out. They also have chocolate bars, so it makes it even easier to get your cacao fix and make sure you're getting all that good stuff in. And it usually has other adaptogens and super herbs with it. So those are really easy ways to make sure that you're getting that nutrient, those nutrients that our bodies are craving and asking us for. And that is just simply devoid in a lot of the calories that we're consuming. So go ahead and check them out for both Energy Bits and for Addictive Wellness. Check out the show notes for a discount code, and that's just for being a listener to the show. That's my thank you to all of you. And as well, I only promote products that I try and that I love, so I know you guys are going to love them as well. So anyways, go ahead and check them out, and that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you found some benefit and hopefully kind of simplified up health and wellness and what kind of food you should be eating, right? Because it's so easy to find people saying one thing on Monday and then another thing on Tuesday, right? About, oh, this food is great for you, this food's terrible for you. Honestly, I think if you just focus on the basics and break it down to something simple like, hey, let's just try to eat some more fruit, veggies, and high quality meats, if that's something that you can include into your diet, great. And then if you can throw in some superfoods, oh my God, amazing, right? If we focus on those things, get some movement, get some good sleep, that right there is probably going to solve most of your issues. So anyways, keep it simple, keep it to the basics, and I promise you that's going to provide most of the benefit here. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you found some benefit in today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Until then, have a beautiful rest of your day. I appreciate y'all being here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.